Hello there ladies and gentlemen, I'm Paul TX14 Walsh, welcoming you to an all new Ace in a Day gameplay for the arcade mode of War Thunder. In this second episode of today, that's right, 2 reviews in one day, we're going to be reviewing the C.R.714, a French fighter aircraft coming at a battle rating of 1.7 and a tier of 1. To provide you with a historical overview as to the C.R.714, we begin thus. In 1936, the French Air Force issued a specification for a light fighter of wooden construction that could be built en masse without disrupting existing production lines. Caudon-Renault submitted their response as the C.R.710, a design based off of their earlier series air racing aircraft which had an extremely long nose to accommodate the Renault 12R01 450 horsepower 12-cylinder inline engine. This meant that the cockpit sat rather far back on the fuselage, leading to a streamlined airframe. The 710 prototype with its fixed landing gear flew for the first time on the 18th of July 1936 with promising results, albeit it was found the plane was held back by its weak engine. Development continued with the subsequent 711 and 712 designs featuring more powerful Renault engines, and as of the 713 prototype, which flew for the first time on the 15th of December 1937, the design saw the introduction of retractable landing gear. The conclusion of the development came with the 714, nicknamed the Cyclone, which you're seeing on screen today. The prototype flew for the first time in April of 1938, and the main changes were as follows: the strengthening of the fuselage, the removal of the two 20mm Hispano-Suiza 9 cannon mounted under wing, and replacing them with 4 7.5mm MAC 1934 machine guns also mounted under wing. And on top of that there was the installation of the 500 horsepower Renault 12R03 inverted V12 engine with a new negative G operable carburettor. Happy with the design, the French Air Force ordered the CR714 into production as the 5th of November 1938, with an order of up to 200 aircraft. Upon initial delivery of the plane in January of 1940, however, the major flaw behind the aircraft was revealed, and that was its poor engine performance, whereby the engine was significantly underpowered, limiting the plane's overall combat capability, particularly its climb rate. The net result of this was that a month later, i.e. in February of 1940, the plane was completely withdrawn from active service, and the production contract was reduced to 90 aircraft. 6 of these aircraft were sent to Finland to fight in the Winter War, but the planes were found to be too unreliable and difficult to fly in Finnish conditions, leading to their rapid removal from service. However, the plane lived on as of the 18th of May 1940, whereby 35 714s were delivered to the Polish Warsaw Squadron, grouped to Chasse Polonaise I-145. And whilst the pilots found the plane to be outclassed against its German counterparts, such as the Messerschmitt 109, the squadron scored 12 confirmed victories between the 8th and the 11th of June 1940. And all of this was despite the fact that as of the 25th of May 1940, the French Minister of War, Guy Lachambre, ordered that all CR714s be grounded until further notice. But with that order, and the eventual capitulation of France as of the 25th of June 1940, the CR714's service lifespan proved to be extremely limited. And with our historical overview concluded, let us take a look at how the 714 handles in the skies of War Thunder's arcade mode. Our gameplay for this review comes from the ground strike map Green Ridge. For this we'll be using the following setup: stealth belts for our machine guns, reasoning being the lack of tracer within these belts reinforces our overall game plan of hidden boom and zoom, catching our foes by surprise, and if we happen to miss in a boom and zoom pass and our opponent does not see any tracer whizzing past their cockpit, they'll be none the wiser to our presence. Our gun convergence is set to 500 meters for the same reason, i.e. boom and zoom. We could set it further, but then we're limited by the overall limited effective range of our machine guns being 650 meters approximately, at which point you'll start to have to compensate for vertical drop on the guns as well. And our fuel load is set to the standard 30 minutes of fuel to ensure we can make it to the end of the game unscathed on fuel capacity. We begin our analysis of the 714 by talking about its climb rate, and if we're honest, the climb rate of this aircraft is one of its key weak points. It is absolutely abysmal. If you try to climb at 25 degrees, you'll very quickly find that whilst you may gain, say, 700 to 800 meters altitude in a single wet stint and in the subsequent cooldown period, your speed will be compromised to the point where you'll be hitting approximately 200 kilometers an hour. And at that point you start to have to worry about your stall characteristics, whereby your stall characteristic starts coming at 170 km an hour, with your stall being at 140 km an hour, and life's just not looking pretty. And with the majority of your higher battle rating opposition being able to outclimb you, whereby in this battle rating 2.7 game we can see a Messerschmitt 19 and a Yak 1 ascending rather rapidly, you need to take an alternative approach. Altitude is not going to be your strong point. And if we put a limit on the altitude for this plane, the effective altitude for this aircraft in my experience is no higher than 2,500 metres. Stay below this and you'll be at maximum engine performance. Go above this, your engine performance begins to degrade, and above 3,000 metres altitude you'll find a sharp drop in engine performance is matched by a sharp drop in overall stability in the aircraft, whereby you'll need to keep your speed above 300 km an hour to keep the plane stable and ready and willing to carry out manoeuvres. But now conversely, as we look down below us and we go into a dive, we find that our dive acceleration is not too bad. And with our maximal dive speed being 822 km an hour, we can build up considerable speed in a dive. Not P-47 Thunderbolt level, but good enough to catch this Hampden by surprise. And we can see that the machine guns do not do too bad when given 3 seconds on target. An unsuspecting foe, the stealth belt's doing their damage, and we carry our momentum through with our decent horizontal energy conservation here. While the other hidden strengths of this plane, to get onto the back of an enemy Hurricane. And we know we're controlling our speeds, that way we do not experience too much of a lock up on our control surfaces, more on that in a second. And carrying our momentum through, we get onto the back of the Hurricane and take them apart for our second kill, saving the backside of our friendly bomber. But continuing to conserve our energy in a horizontal turn, we now latch onto the back of an unsuspecting P-38 Lightning. And opening fire, we pick up our third kill in that pass. A triplet of kills in a very short period of time. And we even carry more momentum forward to go after this P-47 Thunderbolt, but they're aware of our incoming presence, so they go for the head on. We dodge and turn around rather rapidly with our decent turn circle, matching the likes of the Messerschmitt 19mm. But we can see that with the Thunderbolt's speed and our lack of overall engine power, by the time we come around to shoot at them, it's too late, and we're not going to be able to even get a long range shot in due to the limited range of our machine guns. Therefore we need to break off, take a reload and rebuild our overall altitude and energy position. But we've seen in that short period of time how you can very quickly catch foes by surprise and cut them up. Now when you're at lower altitudes, how does the plane perform with normal speeds? Whereby the ideal speed range for this aircraft in my experience is between 250 and 350 km an hour. You can extend this to 400 km an hour, albeit it's a struggle to get to that speed. The reason being the straight line acceleration of this plane from its stall speed up to 300 km an hour is very gradual, and if you bring more emergency power into the mix, you'll find that your acceleration improves drastically and can take you all the way up to 400 km an hour before you see a noticeable decline. And having reconsolidated our position, we're now going to dive on the Thunderbolt once again, split S on top of them, catch them by surprise and cut them apart for our fourth kill. And note as we do so how we can control our plane very nicely at these lower speeds and ensure we cut them open. Now when we say lower speeds, we're talking out below the likes of say 600 km an hour, so let's talk about high speed lockups. In general, your rudder is a strong control surface. You'll be able to flat rudder turn very nicely, but if you take the rudder control surface and try to use it above 550 km an hour, you'll experience lockup. From 550 to 650 km an hour, you'll notice a 50% lockup of the control surface. Looking at the elevator, a decent control surface on the whole, albeit you're not going to be able to loop as tight as a P-36A Hawk, and you'll find that between 600 and 700 km an hour, you lose 50% of its overall performance. And as for your ailerons or your roll rate, your strongest control surface, whereby you can change directions very quickly on the fly and be able to match up to, if not surpass the likes of the Yak 1 and the Messerschmitt 19mm, what you'll find is between 450 and 700 km an hour, your roll rate will drop off to the point you've only got 25% of it remaining. But it's such a gradual lockup that you're able to enact boom and zoom passes at high speeds, so say 600, 650 km an hour, and compensate for the gradual lockup effect. It's not sharp and it's not difficult to deal with. It's something you can manage so long as you set your opponent up accordingly, as we saw at the start. Now here diving down, we elect to go for the P400. They get set on fire by our friendly Thunderbolts, so we quickly spray in some shots to get an assist on the burning wreck, and now we sweep around for this Spitfire Mark 1. As we open fire, we score a good number of hits, but we don't take them out and we decide to disengage. Reason being, whilst we do have decent manoeuvrability and a good turn circle, the Spitfire Mark 1 has a speed in all those regards, and on top of that, engine power. So going to a dogfight with them, especially if it became a 1 versus 1, would be suicidal in the long haul. So instead we opt to harass this enemy Sunderland. Now we're not expecting to bring them down very quickly because of our machine gun armament to be limited in its damage output, but we can deal them a good amount of damage, and we even score a critical hit, knocking out one of their gunners. At this point we swing back to assist our friendly Thunderbolt against the Spitfire. The Spitfire's been rather relentless. We line up the shot and we're going to go for our ace in the day. And there it is. At which point now we want to go back to the Sunderland. But note how long it's going to take us to get to the Sunderland. And on top of that we've already spotted a KI-43 who's set on going for us, and they're 4 kilometres away. Well, they were when we last looked back. Let's take another look. They're now 3.5 kilometres away, and this is really alarming seeing as our speed has just only dropped below 400 kilometres now. If you have someone pursuing you in this plane, even though you've got a bit of speed behind you in some cases, you will find that your foe will catch you very quickly if they're a fellow monoplane aircraft. And to be able to actually start matching the distance or getting away from the KI-43, we're having to dive and sacrifice all of our altitude. And that's one of the problems, because you lack the overall acceleration and the ability to get to high speeds rapidly unless you rely solely on your war emergency power. Being pursued is a nightmare, and it means that once you're stuck in a 1 versus 1, you have to commit to the 1 versus 1 or run the risk of being run down by your opponent. And if it becomes a 2 versus 1 where you're still the one, well, the issue only gets worse. But here we decide to quickly go up and attack the Sunderland once again, trying to knock them out of the skies as quickly as possible. It's not going to work out too well. And other items to note as we go after them, well, in general the durability of this plane is not too bad. It can take hits from light and even heavy machine guns quite effectively, but 20mm cannon rounds will rip this plane to pieces, whereby you only need to take one and the fuselage will be red if not blackened to some extent. And here with the KI-61 coming in right at the end of the game, we get ready to go into 1 versus 1, but as we'll see the game ends just as we're about to go into it. Unfortunate, we would love to have taken them on, but with that, let's take a little look at the post-game stats. With our 5 kills and single assist, we picked up 10,226 silver lions and 2,090 research points. To defeat the 714 in a given matchup then, I can recommend one of 3 approaches. The first is purely for biplane pilots when they encounter this aircraft, and that is to turn fight against it, as you'll have the superior manoeuvrability in all regards at the ideal speed range of this aircraft, i.e. the 250 to 350 km/h referenced earlier on. Meanwhile, if you're in a monoplane fighter, such as a Heinkel 100D1, a Messerschmitt 19ML1 or a Lag-3, your overall prerogative will be to use your superior engine performance and therefore climb rate against this aircraft wherever possible. If the 714 is on your 6, take the fight into a vertical spiral, whereby the 714's lack of engine power will hold it back and eventually they will begin to stall out in your wake, and you can use a hammerhead to come around and finish them off. Alternatively, from the outset of the match, just simply outclimb the aircraft, because once you have the altitude position over it, particularly above 2,500 meters altitude, the 714 pilot is going to struggle to build any more altitude and become a viable threat, and you can dispatch them at your whim with some accurate fire. Avoiding such circumstances today, hopefully we've demonstrated that the C.R.714, despite its considerable weaknesses in terms of its engine performance and its handling up at higher altitudes, is still a viable fighter aircraft to fly. And if anything, it's one of those hidden threats on the battlefield, whereby it crosses the battlefield slowly, but when it gets to its chosen target and gets them within gun convergence, it'll be able to cut them to pieces through sustained machine gun fire. It's a plane that handles pleasantly within its overall altitude and speed performance thresholds, and one that should not be underestimated whether you are the opponent or the pilot flying it. And if anything, this has become one of my favourite low battle rating aircraft simply because it feels so smooth to fly. And if we bring its nickname back in from earlier on in the historical overview, I would like to call the 714 the Graceful Cyclone. And so I've been TX141, and if you have enjoyed this video, why not leave a like, comment or subscribe for future War Thunder videos on my channel. But until next time, ladies and gentlemen, take care and good luck in the skies.